Okay, hello. In this quick video, I'm going to be talking about the solution to the second challenge from today's meeting, where we start using binding. Before doing that, I want to give a little context around what binding is and how it's working in this example. So, to show what binding works, how binding works real quick, I want to do something a little bit different. So, I'm going to make a state variable called text message, which is string and starts empty. Now I'm going to use a built-in component from SwiftUI called text field. This takes in the title, which gets used as the placeholder. So I say enter text message, and then the text takes a binding to our state variable. Okay, what happens here is that I'm going to go ahead and run it in the simulator to show you a little better. So what text field does is it shows some UI on screen that the user can tap on, which will then present the system keyboard, which they'll use to type in, like you've done probably thousands and thousands of times. So while the simulator's loading, here's the simulator. I have a fun little extension on my simulator that makes it real easy to record the videos that you've seen, the videos and GIFs that you've seen throughout the semester. Once this finishes loading, here we go. I can click on the text field, and then I can toggle on the software keyboard. And now we're seeing the system keyboard, and I can type in a message, and it fills in the text field. What's happening here is SwiftUI is presenting this UI, and it is taking a binding to our text, and as the user types in, it's updating our text message state variable. And I can show you this by displaying the contents of the state variable alongside the text field. So now we have the text, poorly named, and the text message text field. If I click on here, and now since we're in the preview, the software keyboard doesn't show up, but I can still type on my Mac's hardware keyboard. I can say hello comp 433, and as you saw, while I'm modifying the text, SwiftUI is updating the contents of this text message variable. So what the binding allows you to do specifically is for the text field component to write back to our state variable. If we did not use the binding and just passed it as normal, because string in Swift is a value type, the text field would be receiving a copy, not a reference to our string. But when we use the $sign prefix to pass a binding, instead of just passing a normal string, this is passing the binding to our text message string. So text field is now able to write back to our state variable, which is very nice. We're going to use this in our app, our little tiny app, to modify the rating from the rating view component. But before we jump into that, I want to start by instantiating a rating view. And here we're going to be rating Silo, private var Silo, which is a new show that I've been really enjoying. So I'm going to say Silo rating, and for now I'm going to say it's 0, but soon we'll be able to change that to give it a more proper score. So for now, I'm just going to pass in the Silo rating to our rating view, and we'll see that rating view that we built last time showing 3 stars. If I changed it to 1, we'll see 1 star gets filled in. If I change it to 2, the same thing happens. Same for 3. Once that loads. So yeah, now we have 3 stars in our preview. What we want to be able to do is dynamically update this rating view. For now, I'm going to make a separate button just to demonstrate something very quickly. So I'm going to have a button that says increment, which will increment the Silo rating. So I can press increment, it jumps to 1, to 2, and to 3. But it'd be a lot more convenient if we could press on the stars themselves to modify the rating. Those stars are held inside of rating view, so we're going to need to jump into there and make this happen. So, as we've seen, if we want to be able to press on something and run some action, we're going to use a button. As we've seen before, there's a lot of ways to make a button. I'm going to use the generic action label initializer. This takes in a closure, or just a chunk of code that we can run when the button is pressed, and a label which will be the view that represents the button on screen. If I press enter on one of these, then we'll get the code completion to rewrite it using trailing closure syntax. This is a bit of fancy syntax in Swift that allows us to sort of omit some of the parentheses and extra characters when we're dealing with multiple closures being passed to an initializer or function. You don't really need to understand that right now, but all you need to know is that when we have it like this, we can pass in any old view in here, and then this will be used as our label, and the code that we put in here will run as our action. So I want to make the button label be our image for the star image. I'm going to do the same thing for our other buttons as well. I'm going to quickly do this with some Vim, boom, highlight, replace, and then change the numbers back so that we get the correct sort of changing symbols as we change the rating. Okay, so now we're back to the same place, and it's time to implement these button actions. What we'll want to do when this first button, the first star is pressed, is set the rating to 1. But we can't write to the rating property because it's a let constant, and we can't update it. We could try to make this just a normal var, but that won't work either for a number of reasons. Instead, we'll want to use binding var, @binding var, to write, so that we can write from the rating view to the rating parameter that's been passed in by the parent. Now we're getting some errors in the preview because we're just passing in some integer literals into our rating views in the preview declaration. This is where we can do something a little funky. We can pass in, or we can create a rating view as normal, but we need some binding. We need to use some kind of binding to our rating. So I can try using @state var, or @state private var rating. Let's say like we can do severance rating and set that equal to 0 for now, which we would change with the buttons, and pass a binding to it. But we get another error here that private can only be used in a non-local scope. This is just a sort of implementation detail of how the pound preview works. It's a little funky, the implementation, but all you need to know is that to use a state variable, like to pass a binding from a preview declaration and to use a state variable, we can take out private to get the compiler to be happy and say @previewable. This is another really interesting piece of syntax, and the implementation is weird, but what you need to know about @previewable is that it allows a sort of dynamic property like a state property to be used inline in a view. And this is very, very similar to our usage. I pressed Option and clicked on the type I wanted to see information about to show Xcode's built-in documentation. But now we have a state variable, and we're passing a binding to it, to our rating view in the preview declaration. Now we're getting another error that we can see up here in content view. This is because, again, we're not passing a binding into our rating view, we're just passing a normal integer. That's because we're not using the $sign prefix, which will, instead of referencing the integer value, will create a binding to this state variable so that this rating view is able to modify and read this state property. Now we're compiling and everything's good. And I can go ahead and finish writing this implementation. So I changed the second button to set the rating to 2 and the third button to set the rating to 3. Now in the preview, since I have this at previewable state variable, I can go in and press the buttons on my rating, and it's working great. But to really illustrate what this is doing, I want to show it in the context of content view. So I want to add a second rating state variable, so the bear rating, for example, and then I'm going to do some UI cleanup very quickly. So I can say text silo, and then duplicate all of this, or just do the same thing, make a vstack, text the bear, rating view rating, pass in the bear rating. Okay, so I'm going to add in a little bit of spacing just to move things around. What's happening here is we have two separate rating views that are bound, that have bindings to two separate state variables. And now I can click on the buttons that we just made in rating view and update the ratings. And if I want to show it a little bit more clearly, I can show the ratings in the texts. So I can pass in some string interpolation here. Now when I click on the first star for silo, second star, third star, the text updates. First star, second star, third star. So what this is doing is allowing our rating view to modify the state variables of content view, which allows data to be communicated back up. This is really, really important and a really sort of fundamental point of SwiftUI and how we pass data around. And you will use this a lot throughout the semester. So I think it would be good to make sure that you can do this project, do this challenge, and understand it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us in office hours or on CampusWire or anything. I hope this helps. Yep, see you in the next one.